Welcome to the Boxing Source Podcast, where we go over the latest news in boxing and react to all of the fights that happened in the past week. Now, let's go to our host, J.R. Bell.
Yeah. What's going on, everybody? Oh, man. Yep, I am here. I am back. Yes, it's on Monday, June 9th, 2025 for the Boxing Source Podcast because yesterday, it was a long day. Saturday, I went from Norfolk back to my home at about 5:30 in the morning. And all day Saturday, I've been battling with bad voice. Didn't really have my voice there on Saturday. Sunday, same thing. So I was just dealing with that, trying to recover from all of that. And now, that's why I put it to Monday. And, I still am, trying to get through all of that here at this particular point. But one time for everyone that's going to be listening here live, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble, we got a lot that we're going to try to cover here on this particular podcast. As Norfolk, oh my goodness, it was an absolutely insane scene from Thursday through early Sunday morning. Me getting there Thursday for the press conference, Friday for the big news that happened there at the weigh-in, Saturday with the fights. After the fights, it was absolutely crazy. And then just getting back Sunday and then trying to recover from all of that. So, I'm still like in shock with a lot of the stuff that went down. But we're gonna try to get as much as we can here from that fight card and some clarification to what basically happened as far as like after the fights. Because of course that is like easily the biggest story out there that came from the Scope Arena in Norfolk, Virginia. So, of course, you had the main event that was Abdullah Mason versus Jeremiah Nakatila. And that was the main event because, of course, Keyshawn Davis, who was the WBO lightweight champion, showed up at the weigh-in at 139.4 pounds. Yes, over 4 pounds overweight, over 4 pounds over the lightweight limit of 135 pounds. And, once, he said that he's at 139.4, he pretty much made the comment that, like, no, he's not going to go ahead and lose those 4 pounds or make an effort to lose those 4 pounds. And so at the time, and Friday had the fight in danger and jeopardy. And then, the decision was made to go ahead and have that fight canceled. That decision was basically made by the promoter of Edwin De Los Santos, and that's Sam Salukowicz, who was on stage there when they had the face-off between Keyshawn Davis and Edwin De Los Santos. And he just, kind of like looked at Keyshawn and said, yeah, you weren't really, trying to be able to get down to 135 and, try to go there at 139 and then go forward with the fight. Potentially could have Edwin De Los Santos as a WBO lightweight champion, but on the flip side, you could have Keyshawn Davis there rehydrating, to around 150 or so pounds for the night of the fight. So, he kind of like made that decision to say, nope, we're not going to go forward with it. We got the money that we have for the original purse. We could have gotten an additional percentage of Keyshawn's purse, which was reported to be $1 million for that fight. But they said, nah, we'll just get what we get and then just, walk away. We honored our part of the contract. We showed up on weight for the sanctioned fight by the World Boxing Organization for their lightweight title. It was Keyshawn that wasn't able to do it. So that's why that fight was scrapped. And then, we had went down on Saturday. Of course, you have the main event now being Abdullah Mason versus Jeremiah Nakatila, which, I'll get to here in a little bit. But we'll go into, of course, a big story which stems from the co-feature bout, which ended up being Kelvin Davis versus Nahir Albright. Of course, Kelvin Davis came in there with an undefeated record there at the 140-pound division. Nahir Albright had an extended layoff. He didn't have a fight since his bout against Keyshawn Davis in Texas in 2023, which was a decision win for Keyshawn Davis. It ended up being a no contest due to the rules of the Texas State Athletic Commission saying that you cannot test positive for like any type of drug whatsoever. That includes marijuana. And yep, Keyshawn Davis tested positive for marijuana. Right. So that's why that ended up being a no contest. 2024, we saw what happened there with Keyshawn Davis with his 3 wins, then culminating to what happened in February of 2025 with him winning that WBO lightweight title. Now, he couldn't even have one defense of that WBO lightweight title. So now you got Nahir Albright that had the fight with Keyshawn Davis. Now in there against Kelvin Davis, who, as I said, was undefeated, had his last bout in March of this year that was on ProBox. We had conversation with Kelvin Davis before that bout on ProBox, which was originally scheduled for March 8th in California, but they couldn't have an opponent there at that time. Then it got pushed back through about a couple of weeks for Kelvin Davis to step in the ring. And he was able to get in there and, get a stoppage victory. So he was, riding that momentum, riding that wave and all that type of stuff going into this bout against Nahir Albright. Now, Nahir Albright was looking forward to, being part of this event, part of this fight card, being a spoiler of sorts, like, Edwin De Los Santos could have been a spoiler or try to be a spoiler for Keyshawn Davis if that fight took place. So now, when Nahir Albright going in there with a record of 16-2, he just said, you know what? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to see if I can fight my fight. And, well, early in this bout, that's what you saw. For me, Kelvin kind of like fought a bad fight, at least in my standards, just live reaction to it. Almost there ringside, taking photos there. And I'm basically like right next to one of the judges there on ringside. And, those first few rounds, I see, Kelvin, he was just pretty much there, as a southpaw. If you're watching here live on YouTube or Rumble, he's like, as a southpaw, he has a reach advantage, but with his right hand, he's like fighting off of his back foot. So like he's in there and he's, trying to, throw the right jab, but he's throwing it while, going backwards. And to me, when you have like a reach advantage, you kind of like give it up when you're stepping backwards because you're kind of like pulling back your jab either while you stop to throw the jab or while you're moving back. So Nahir Albright early kind of caught on to that, being a shorter fighter there, at around 5'8", was getting around that jab and then, and then just unloaded with the right hand early, had the right hand early, you know what I'm saying? So once you seen Nahir Albright land that right hand, it was it just changed the whole momentum of the fight there real early. Shout out Ben here on the live chat says open the panel. I'm gonna see if I can do that here in a little bit. Got a few a few of my panelists that'll be jumping on here in a bit, and then after that, we'll get some few live reactions here from folks here on the live chat. You feel me? You know what I mean? And yeah, like you said, man. With Nahir Albright, he was just down there, as far as like being the orthodox fighter, and just down the below and going up top with the right. And the thing is, like Kelvin, he had his hand up, pretty much like his right hand up throwing the jab, but his left was kind of low below his face and everything like that. So he didn't really have his right hand or left hand, on the phone, and he was getting called with counter right hands. And that kind of like set the tone early here in that bout between Nahir Albright and Kelvin Davis. And I just felt like Nahir Albright won the number of rounds there early, and you really didn't see a shift from Kelvin Davis until about midway through the fight where he wasn't kind of stepping back. and he was stationary, throwing a jab and trying to be a little bit, more aggressive with the right jab, and then following up with the left hand and stuff like that. But you can see even with that, he was still, fighting off the back foot, kind of not throwing the jab as often as possible. And hey, y'all were watching it, live there, whether it was on ESPN Plus or ESPN or whatever. And I would be sure that Coach Brian McIntyre was coaching and telling Kelvin to throw that right jab there and continue to throw it. And you kind of like heard it during the fight, like throw the jab, be more active. And he just didn't necessarily do that for the majority of the fight. And then what was key there in like the 9th and 10th rounds, you've seen Nahir Albright turn it up, there as far as like the activity and landing more shots, particularly in the 10th round. You've seen him like throw a whole bunch of punches in close quarters, throwing through a lot of punches. Near the end of that round, throwing a lot of punches, making sure that the activity is there so that the judges that are there on ringside seeing the activity, so that's the thing about it. And I'll talk about how it is when you have a judge on one side, because as I mentioned, I'm right next to one of the judges, and he, like, that judge was like in between the blue corner and the neutral side, right? So if you look to the left, it would be the blue corner, and then if you look to the right, it'll be the neutral corner. And when you have like activity there in the neutral corner, you have photographers and people there, so the judge, you would have to make sure that you kind of like slide back a little bit so the judge is able to see the action. But sometimes the photographers out there, they may or may not kind of like move when they can. So sometimes the judge isn't able to see what's going on that particular neutral corner, at least that judge, right? So you could have blind spots there for judges. So I'm gonna get into the scorecards there a little bit, but I got one of my panelists here joining on in the queue, and that's my guy, of course, from the ATL area, whatnot. It's the Boxing Academic here in the building. What's going on, Boxing Academic?
What's going on, JR? You kind of scared me a bit, man. You thug like tonight, I see.
Nah, it was it was either that or looking like Prince Nazim Richardson or something, man. Rest in power, Nazim Richardson. You feel me? You know what I mean?
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with it. I need a haircut too.
Nah, I mean, like this not necessarily like the full do rag or whatever, but yeah, I'm chilling, man. I'm like I said, still in recovery mode. I didn't have a show yesterday because like I didn't have a voice at all, man. I was just, I don't know, congested, allergies or whatever. I was done. I couldn't speak for nothing there. So I just said, nah, let me just try to do it today, get through it today and all of that stuff. So yeah, man. Yeah, that fight with Kelvin Davis and Nahir Albright, man. It was a pretty good action fight, in different spurts, but it was more about, like Albright doing what he did there. Shout out Dan on the live chat, man. He said, hey, Nahir was changing levels and Kelvin wasn't matching the energy. Yep, exactly. He wasn't with the output, overall punches. The jab wasn't there. Like I didn't see him really use that reach that he had to his advantage there. He pretty much like gave that up, backing up to the ropes or backing up for the majority of the fight. So it was like, why are you kind of like giving up your reach advantage by backing up, so to speak? If you're watching here on YouTube or Rumble, like backing up, and then just it's almost like you're intensely pulling your jab by fighting off your back foot right there. So that's what I had as far as like initial thoughts of what happened in that particular fight between Kelvin Davis and Nahir Albright. Wanted to get your initial thoughts on it, and then we got another one of our panelists here about to jump in. So what you got, Boxing Academic?
Yeah. So one of the things that the guests probably don't know that I'm about to make sort of public is that I look at Instagram and I see the guy, his name Aaron the Plumber. I see him doing like boxing stuff. I'm gonna relate it back to the subject in a second.
Okay.
And so one of the things that sort of makes me sort of fearful for him is that he's just starting boxing, and the coach allows him, and shout out to the coach, because obviously training boxing is not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is I'm just being critical just to make a point here. And this is no indictment on him, nothing like that. I'm just calling it like it is. So essentially, he's starting boxing training and he's training bad habits in that he's trying to have a Philly shell with the hand low, trying to keep the right hand, up. But in my estimation, the right hand ain't up high enough to like block anything. And Andre Ward does a good job of putting a landmine in front of him with his lead hand. He's one of the best people to do that. And James Toney used to do it too. Like James Toney would knock your jab and make it go up, and which would allow him to just lean just a little bit and then counter with his uppercut. And so I'm saying this to say what I saw yesterday, and I'm gonna be the first to say is that Kelvin Davis is probably, his brother probably closer to world class than he is, just being honest. But he's in the pedigree of hanging around guys who are world class. So the guy is a decent boxer. But what I saw yesterday is that this is a habit that was trained or that was not unlearned. And so a guy who literally the only thing he did was throw heavy shots, Kelvin didn't have the ability to either sidestep it, like even when his hands was up, he couldn't really block it because his hands was sort of, not high enough. And, like it's just like sort of the fundamentals that I'm saying. I would have to go back and watch the exact specifics to say what he could have done differently, because I wasn't watching it for that. But all I'm simply saying is that when you go through your career and you train bad habits and you face that one fighter who does something that you're not able to counter because you've been training like this for such a long time, and essentially, like habits, you ain't gonna break the habit in the fight. And so going back to the guy, Aaron the plumber, the coach, I'm sure, is a great coach. At the same time, my man gonna get knocked out by having his hand low, because the only thing somebody got to do is throw over the top of it, which leads me back to Kelvin Davis. With the hand being low, with your front hand being low, the only thing the person literally has to do is throw over the top of it. Do something to make you, make you sort of like make a move or whatever, and then throw the next shot over the top. And that's all he did. And then he didn't really have the ability to change that. Now, one thing that I ain't gonna say happy, but I was thankful for is that you said you're gonna wait to say the scorecards. One scorecard, which they called out first, made me raise an alarm. And I'm like, oh man, this guy did everything he was supposed to do. And this is what we doing. And I'm gonna wait till you mention it, because everybody is waiting for you to hear it. But I made a comment about Shakur Stevenson, and I bigged up Keyshawn Davis. I'm gonna wait to my comments, because when you get on it, because I know I'm leading you here. But essentially, he practiced something he didn't have the ability to offset that, because he had been practicing something which was a bad habit, and he didn't have the ability to adjust and stop that bad habit that he had always been doing. That's what I saw.
And yeah, with those scores there, you had one score there from Brian Casello at 95-95. And as they announced that, it said overruled by Paul Rawless with a score of 96-94, and a score from Dave Braslow at 97-93 for the majority decision to be in favor of Nahir Albright. Now, I got my other panelists here. I'm saying this, the resident chef of the Boxing Source podcast, the music manager, everything like that, Mr. TTP Promotions, Brother Terrell is in the building, man. What's going on with you, man?
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
What's good, up, Terrell? Man. I'm slowly recovering, man. Slowly recovering from the weekend, man.
What's going on? You all right?
I mean, by the time I got back, well, I had the issue there while I was, there during the fights, but I didn't have a voice. Basically, I was like hoarse, all that type of stuff. So barely had a voice there on Saturday. Dealt with the same thing here yesterday. So I've been drinking like herbal teas and waters and all that type of stuff to get my voice back, man. But yeah,
So,
as you see, man, I'm trying to be all good here.
Terrell, I've
Yes,
been
boss.
telling JR not to kiss them girls in the club.
Oh, come
I've been
on.
telling JR he need to stop ever since we was in Vegas. He need to stop kissing them girls in the club. I've been telling him that. Stop
He
kissing
need,
them. Stop kissing them girls in the mouth in the club, JR. That's what I've
Oh,
been trying to
hey,
tell him
whoa,
that.
nah, yo, come on, man. No, that is not what I'm doing. That is not what I'm doing. No.
All right, I'm joking. I ain't seen him. I ain't seen him kiss
oh
nobody in the
shit.
mouth. With my own two eyes, I ain't seen it. I only heard a sound. I only heard that sound. I ain't see him do it. I only just heard a sound.
Come on, man.
I took it back there. I ain't never seen it happen. I took it back. So I was, I wasn't being truthful. I didn't see it happen.
He needs
Because it
some
never
milk.
happened.
He needs some milk.
Oh, oh man, yo, that's crazy. Yo, Terrell, man, what's happening with you, man? Oh goodness, yo, yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one, though. I'll give you that.
hey, hey,
That was a
hey,
good one there, Vice Academic.
hey, friends like that don't need no enemies.
Word,
Hey,
word.
if we can't give each other a hard time, then what? Then are we really friends? Have we been friends
Hey,
for
that's what we
all
do.
these
Y'all know
years?
that.
All
We
these,
that's
yeah,
what that talk your shit. That's what we do. That's
yeah,
when you know you
exactly.
cool with somebody.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
If
but
you
you know it's
can't, if
all in
you
love.
can't
You know it's
insult,
all in love.
if you can't insult them, then yeah, that's not your real friend. You feel me? Yeah, man. So what's going on, Mr. Security Man?
No, man, I just wanted to definitely jump on the show and voice my opinion as you progress to that point. I didn't get to see the actual fights this weekend, but definitely saw the behavior post fights,
Mm.
right? And definitely the behavior pre-fight. On top of that, things like that. So I'm sure you already get to it, but I'll let you delve back into it. But I'm just ready to jump in and just voice my opinion probably pretty strongly at this time. Usually I'm cool,
Mhm.
but like this one really, really bothers me on the Keyshawn Davis camp and just all
Okay,
that.
yeah.
So
Okay. All right. So with that being said, I'll get into like the aftermath of it because there was stuff going on. Like I'll go over like what I kind of experienced live, and then afterwards, like getting back and then seeing what happened or what was shown and things like that. Right? Okay. So the main event happens here with Abdullah Mason versus Jeremiah Nakathila. Of course, y'all know the result. Abdullah Mason, gets to stop his victory. The ref or the doctor calls it. Well, they didn't really call it. It was really the fighter. But that happens, right? And during the fight live, y'all watched it on ESPN. You had Mark Kriegel talking with Nahir Albright, and Nahir Albright, was saying that hey, through his words, he got jumped by Keyshawn Davis and Keon Davis. Okay. So I'm there ringside, still, there with the Abdullah Mason Nakathila thing. So I don't know anything about it or nothing. After that whole fight is done, I'm like getting back to the place where they do the post fight interview. So I'm like pretty much behind the Mason clan, Mason brothers, and father, and everything like that. So they're having a post fight presser, and then the questions go up, and then they're talking about, oh, and Nahir Albright getting attacked by Keyshawn and Keon Davis, and this is live, and I'm like, what you talking about? So I missed like all of that. So I'm like, yo, this is crazy. They did this. I'm like, man. So at the time, I'm like, yo, Keyshawn basically done. Like he's like done as far as like big fights or whatever it is, right? So now, fast forward, we get to the around today. And this also includes some of the stuff that I heard like over the past couple of days, right? So what happened is Nahir Albright was in this locker room, and the way that the locker room was set up at the Scope Arena is like if you have a red corner and you have a blue corner locker room, right? They're next to each other. So when the Kelvin Davis Nahir Albright fight was over, and they had the whole checks and everything ringside, everybody, like all of the entourages, are in the on opposite locker rooms. So you have Albright in his locker room with his crew, with his team and all of that type of stuff. And then the other locker room is at the other side. So Keyshawn comes over and he kind of like gets a little bit confrontational with Nahir Albright and kind of like, has his like head like right in, right at the same pause, right, next to Nahir Albright. So it's more of like, how to have those face-offs and they're like really close and they're like, like face to face, but they're like really close and they're touching each other. That's pretty much what it seemed like happened in that particular instance. And, I guess Keyshawn may have gotten overly aggressive with it. And then, they just had like a, little bit of a shoving match or whatever. Like no punches were thrown, nothing like that. But with Keyshawn and Keon being in there, having that type of energy, that amplified things a lot, right? So they end up leaving Albright's locker room, okay? And then I guess it was a crew there for Albright, hears about what was going on and confronts Keyshawn about it. And so what happened outside the locker room was mostly the stuff that people saw on ESPN was that whole scuffle that was outside of the locker room, right? So it's like a whole bunch of pushing going on, pushing and shoving. And Keyshawn was like in the middle of that. They initially break that up. And then Keyshawn, goes to, where his kid is and everything like that, and then tries to make sure that they're safe and gets, their family, whatever, out of the way. Right. But it seemed like a member of Albright's, crew or whatever it is, right? Keyshawn goes around the area around where, there's top rank security and the police were trying to break everything up. And then one person that was in purple actually took a swing at Keyshawn Davis. You could see it on the video. He took a swing at Keyshawn Davis. And that's basically what set Keyshawn off to where he's like, really trying to get at the person. But after that guy took a swing, they immediately like pushed him off. And there was like a set of double doors and they pushed him through those double doors and he was like out of there. So Keyshawn couldn't get to him, but you could see the whole scuffle going on right there, right? So you had what Keyshawn did in the locker room. You had the reaction of what Keyshawn did in the locker room. And that's where everything like kind of set itself off, okay? For me, the person that really held his cool over all of this is Kelvin Davis. Immediately after the fight, in the locker room, even when everything was going on, he was the one that was the most level-headed out of all of this. He was the one that kind of, that spoke with his younger brother, Keyshawn, spoke with Keon, all of that. And all the way through, he's been the one that's like said, hey, it's a minor setback. Hey, I apologize for what happened and all of that. But he was the one, he didn't get confrontation with anybody. He didn't kind of say anything, bad to any of the parties involved from what I saw. You can watch what video was there. I've heard there's another one. That's all I'm going to say. Heard there's another one. But Kelvin Davis was not involved one bit out of that whole thing. It was more about, Keyshawn, how he reacted, going to the locker room, being confrontational with Nahir Albright, and then having that set off what happened outside of the locker room. Okay. So with Keyshawn, I don't know what's gonna, happen with all this. As far as like what Nahir Albright said initially when they had that confrontation in the locker room, he's like, you know what? You don't need to sell this outside the ring. Let's sell this inside the ring. Let's have a rematch. That's what he said there to Mark Kriegel. That's what he said in a post fight with all the media members. When I was there. So for Nahir Albright, he wants a rematch with Keyshawn Davis. For Keyshawn, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with all of this because there's a lot of fallout from it, and given the current situation with Top Rank in their television deal, is really something there. Brother Terrell, you're there back with us. What you got on it, as far as what I explained and what could happen out of all of this.
Can I ask you one question? I'm not skipping Terrell. So was his head lumped up right after they left out the room?
Hold on. I have to, as they say, check the replay, right? So what I'm gonna do, because he did say that welt that was above his eye was from Keyshawn doing that. So what I'll do is I'll check the so-called replays and I'll see Nahir Albright's condition at the end of the fight and then see if that aligns with what he was saying.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Terrell.
And I ain't gonna say now. You got it, boss. No, I'm joking.
Oh man!
No, no, I'm joking, man. No, for real. So I need to go back to the beginning of the show. I'm sure you guys already talked about the fact that Keyshawn missed weigh-in and all that stuff. Then, because for one, my disgust with him starts from that point. This point, missing weight, not being professional, probably not even trying to make weight, and supposedly having people spray him down and look like he's sweating, trying to make the attempt. It's just despicable. And now you fast forward to this, right? Now I get it. You want to be there for your brothers, right? I get that. Matter of fact, someone was just telling me a recent story last week. They said it was two brothers that was involved in an altercation, right? And one of the brothers wanted to run a fade with another person, and the one brother said, "Well, if you fight my brother, I'm jumping in." I'm like, yo, how you gonna do that? Let your brother be a man and fight for his damn self. So, so this fast forward to this incident is not surprising. But in this arena of boxing, when you are the ambassador of a show, you have so much on the line to continue to bring the sport of boxing to focus in your hometown and to make it a major fighting spot. Hell, sometimes we're going to take a loss. Sometimes we will, right? But that's life. That's life, and that's boxing. We know that, right? But to get to the point where you get vexed and you want to escalate it to something else outside the ring. Once again, you are the reason for the show. You're the reason. And just last year, I think after this last fight, we came on here and we talked about Keyshawn so much and applauded him for bringing boxing back to Norfolk, right? And putting his family on, and probably countless other people that we know, giving other people opportunities to get on and involved with what he's doing right there. And you come here and you just negate that. Forget your own performance, not make weight, but to come here and do this and cause a fight and bring a black eye to boxing, and once again, you are ambassador of the show. It's embarrassing. It's despicable. And y'all know me. We don't talk like this, but you act like a straight nigger. And I hate to say that, but it's true. It's true. And I say that in like Bernie Mac say, you a nigger, and I don't mean that in a good way. But I say that in disgust. And I'm being strong with my words now because we expect more from black men in this day and age when we're constantly vilified for not being smart enough, not being able enough, and so many other things that we're vilified. That's just not true, right? And now you purportedly fall right into that stereotype, and it gets magnified. And once again, I mean, look at Terrence Crawford turned Omaha, Nebraska into a boxing spot. A nobody, a virtual nobody at the time.
Yeah.
Look what he did with Omaha, Nebraska, and Norfolk is a bigger market. And on top of that, like I said, JR, you got ESPN online for getting a new contract and things like with boxing. This doesn't help. This doesn't help at all. It doesn't help at all. Not at all. And I'm just disgusted with the whole incident. It's just a black eye for boxing. And I'm gonna say it carefully. It's it's sad for the appearance of black men. And I know he doesn't speak. This doesn't speak for all black men. I know that. I'm not saying that, but it's just not a good look. It's not a good look. And like I said, and it's funny because he gets this. He gets it so much as far as what he's doing, what he's trying to get to, things like that. And you come to this and let this happen, and you're the spark behind that. Dog, you got to do better, man. Because like you're the face of boxing for that town. You're trying to do something. You're in the midst of doing something, and now, like you said, they probably don't want to fuck with him for real. Why would you? Why would you want that on TV? No, you don't. No, you don't. Not for a major network.
Word. And you know, it's a lot of comments there from Brother Terrell on this. And you know, I did, you know, check the, you know, see if I had checked the replay of sorts here. And so, you know, for those that are, you know, watching live, you'll be able to see it. There, of course, you got referee Malik Waleed there, and you got, you know, Nahir Albright there, and you know, that's like, you know, immediately after the fight. And not sure if y'all could see it, but you know, there, you know, seems to be like a thing there with the cut, but you know, I don't see, you know, that much red there on Nahir Albright on that side, which is supposed to be his right eye, so to speak, there, right? So I guess afterwards, you know, that they had that confrontation, and you know, it just sparked everything that happened after the fight, right? But you know, going, you know, from what Brother Terrell was saying, this is for, you know, the week overall. Yeah, this is supposed to be for Keyshawn Davis having his first defense of the WBO lightweight title. You know, we had the initial press conference there in Norfolk, you know, a couple months ago. You have the mayor, you know, that's involved, Kenny Alexander. You had, you know, what is it, Mike Vick, you know, coach of the Norfolk State University Spartans football team. That, you know, they were part of. They were involved in the events there for, you know, the spring football game at Norfolk State University. You had Mike Vick in attendance at the press conference and at the weigh-in, you know, and then, you know, seeing what was happening there at the weigh-in, and then what, you know, Keyshawn was telling Christina Hunter after that is saying, like, you know, no, I'm not making the effort to, you know, try to get the weight down. You know, we gonna see if we get, you know, still get it going. And if not, you know, go ahead and go see my brothers and this and that and the third. I mean, that's one thing, but you know, kind of like the way that you handle it is, you know, not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily make for a good look. Okay. And then, you know, seeing what's happened, you know, after the fights, you know, you can't like approach the opposing locker room and do something like that. You just can't, because, you know, as stated, you're pretty much putting the city of Norfolk on the map. You had Scope Arena in a sellout in your last event there against Gustavo Lemos, and was going to be another sellout here if you had the fight with Edwin De Los Santos. So you're on the verge of building yourself to be a really, really big player there in the lightweight division and in boxing. And this could have been like your first $1 million purse, being with your first defense of that WBO lightweight title. So to kind of like go at it the way that you did, not a good look. As I said, afterwards, after being in the locker room, what happened with that reaction, that's basically, you know, part of a scuffle there. Now, as far as like the person that threw a punch at Keyshawn, they shouldn't have did that. Definitely shouldn't have did that. But for Keyshawn to like handle it that way, not a good look. I'm not sure what those in Top Rank are going to do at this point from that. Um, I talked with a couple of people that represent Top Rank. One of them, I did make comments to them. They haven't made comments back in reference to that incident whatsoever at this point. The other one, I'll see if I could reach out to them and see what they say. But with Top Rank having now one more telecast on the ESPN contract. It was going to be two because there was supposed to be another one in a couple of weeks. But that fight card in New Jersey, as far as I know, has been canceled. So they only have one left, and that's on July 26th at the theater at Madison Square Garden. And when you have like these different fighters that you're investing your time and resources to, you want them to carry themselves at a certain way. And this right here from Keyshawn really is a definite setback. And yeah, I know that Nahir Albright does want that rematch with Keyshawn Davis. I spoke with his promoter there for RDR Promotions in Philadelphia. They are looking to try to pursue that rematch. But hey, I don't know what's going to happen from this point forward when it comes to Keyshawn Davis because he doesn't have a belt. We had those, interviews with I think Najee Chill, of Cigar Talk, and also with Andre Ward for the Art of Ward, and that was going to be part of his whole buildup is getting him to be more noticeable, in the public, and he was on the verge of having some high-profile fights at 135 with either Andy Cruz. Maybe Tank Davis. He was talking about fighting Tank Davis. And no, he doesn't. He says that he doesn't want to fight his brother, and he did explain that of sorts as far as like his brother there, Shakur Stevenson. But a fight like that, as I've talked about, would still have been a big fight. Like, hey, it's your brother, but money is money. You know what I'm saying? So all of that was right there in front of him, and yet, with what he did, that all could basically be taken away from him. So that was my comments on that. And like I said, once again, for Kelvin Davis to handle it the way that he handled it, props to him because his younger brothers had been a certain way, acted a certain way. I don't know what Keyshawn Davis did specifically in that, so I can't really speak to what Keyshawn Davis did. But this is more about Keyshawn and everything like that. And Kelvin kind of handled it as the elder brother. And kind of said what he said to his brothers, and said, "Hey, I apologize for the actions of them, and this isn't how we handle things." So, props to Kelvin Davis for saying that, and we'll see what happens with him next because hey, with it being his first loss, how it is a lot of times when a fighter has their first loss, that could really affect them from that point of their career. So we got to see how Kelvin Davis bounces back from that. Anything more? Box Academic, you had something on it?
Yeah, I definitely got something on it. So last week or whenever we had the last show when we were talking about Shakur Stevenson, I made a comment where I sort of bigged up Keyshawn Davis because everything was setting up for a crescendo where he comes out. You can tell he fights with emotion. He want to get the fans a crowd, and he want to knock the person out for his own self, right? He got that own little thing about himself, and so that can be a fan friendly sort of style, and he liked talking mess, and it's just entertaining at times. So you come into this fight, you lose your promoter money. Your promoter is toward the end of their deal on a major platform, and one of the shows that would either go for or against the case to keep your promoter on there is you being the headliner, you having almost a sellout arena, all these things set up for you to essentially, even if you wanted to move promoters to do, like the carpet is laid out there. You just had to go in there and beat the guy up, which it was very likely that you were going to do that. And then you get in here and, yeah, I get it. Some people miss weight, and then they're able to keep the fight going. But looking at what's his name and just the way that his body was and stuff, and he just looked really dehydrated. I don't blame him for not taking the fight. He looked kind of lethargic. He didn't look great to me. And so, I mean, I get it. He's like, nah, I'm not going to put myself at risk for you to have this big advantage, and I'm dehydrated, and my brain ain't got the water on my brain. I'm making all this up for him, but I'm just saying. So he says, nah, we ain't trying to move forward. So essentially, the fight is off. Your promoter still has to pay him because that's the rule in that state, from what I heard. And now you go, okay, so you come and you support your brother. Your brother ends up losing the fight. Okay, cool. And so now it's the end of the fight, and you're upset because, at least with Albright, he said they must have heard them celebrating, which is pretty fucking normal for somebody who just won the biggest fight of their life at this point in their career. And then y'all go in there, and then two of y'all go in, and allegedly two of y'all go in, and then he leave the room and he got lumps on his damn face because y'all are. It is sort of it's weak as fuck though. It's like it's sad and is very weak. It's not cool. It's not cool at all. Not cool at all. Somebody in the comment made a comment and said he's young, he'll learn from it. Young brother, I hope you do learn from this, because this shit, I hope it don't go bad or however it goes, but this could have went way left for you. Putting your hands on somebody, you and your brother jumping somebody, this shit real.
Yeah.
Y'all say it again.
No, it was that Albright said like they got jumped, but it wasn't like jump. They did like approach them, but it was only Keyshawn that was physical with Nahir Albright there in the locker room. Okay. Once he did like do the headbutt thing, then like all of the people that were in the locker room like skirt, kind of like pushed them away and all that stuff, and pushed the Keyshawn and Keyshawn Davis and that crew away from Nahir Albright and kind of like got him out of that locker room. But that is just something there. As I said, it would have been $1 million purse there for Keyshawn Davis if he had that fight there against Edwin De Los Santos. And so he ends up losing that $1 million. We had that, like you said, it was one of the last couple of shows there for Top Rank under the ESPN contract. And that, this could have been, put on the spotlight for those who, wanted to potentially invest in Top Rank and Top Rank's product. And you have someone in Keyshawn Davis that would have been like one of their leading guys, especially now since Vasyl Lomachenko retired. But with that being said, you still had Keyshawn Davis that was continuously being on the rise, and that was going to be part of him continually to go up as far as like popularity is concerned. And then what ends up happening happens, and now it's like I have no idea what's going to go forward with that, but you were going to continue on what you were saying.
Yeah. I'm going to end it with this. So before the fight, we were saying we're going to have a better outing when we see Keyshawn Davis as compared to the fight that Shakur had with De Los Santos. And we were projecting that at least his fight, even if it did go to 12 o'clock a.m., it was going to be more of an exciting fight, and we appreciate that for him. I take that back because at least Shakur Stevenson had a fight. Shakur Stevenson be on some young stuff too, from what I can see. But would you rather deal with somebody who gonna be a professional in the ring, who ain't gonna lose you money, or would you rather deal with somebody who you're not sure what you're gonna get from them? And maybe this is a one-time thing, and I hope he learns from it, but this ain't cool. It ain't cool at all. Hope you learn from it.
Even I know we know that Shakur had this incident, years ago. We had that fight in the parking garage. So, and remember, you're a boxer. And you just can't fight people. You train to fuck people up. That's your job,
Yeah.
right? But even with this, back to the Keyshawn thing, yeah, this is the first incident he's had, and I'm not saying he can't recover from it. Yes, you can. This is a country of chances. We know that, right? But think about this angle. So when and if Keyshawn does fight again, if that is on ESPN, would that be in Norfolk? Probably not. And so now you have virtually lost the immediate control of your career. You had a hotbed built up in Norfolk, and like I said, if they do want you to fight again, even if it is on ESPN, they're probably gonna put so many safeguards on the event, so something like this doesn't happen again. Would it be extra security, whatever that may be, right? And not to mention, now you're 9 at 140. You're not ranked at 140. Never fought at 140 to my knowledge. So now you got to get in line, and now your purses are going to be commensurate with that with someone that just got moved to a weight class. Hell, even if he would have made weight and kept that WBO belt, he knew it was a tough thing to make with. He could have had a strap and been a mandatory for whoever's the champion at 140 for the WBO. As we've seen that happen time and time again, where people moved up when they had that belt. So now you lost that. So what do you got going for you now, boss? Do tell.
Ooh, and this goes to what the topic was asking here, as far as like, why do y'all think Davis missed weight by 4 pounds? Well, as I said, I was there, Thursday and Friday, going into Saturday. I think it was because like he really couldn't. I don't think he really could have made weight. My immediate reaction to him missing weight and in the aftermath, while they were thinking about if they were going to actually have the fight with De Los Santos, was that I was thinking about his last fight against Dennis Marincek. And he has the fight there against Dennis Marincek at the theater at Madison Square Garden. And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at Dennis Marincek. And it's like, it almost looked like a guy that was a welterweight or maybe even a super welterweight going up a guy that is probably a shade above lightweight when it comes to rehydration. So I feel like if that is him rehydrating to a certain level, him getting down to 135 at that stage of his career probably was fairly tough. That's what I was thinking initially. So I'm thinking after that particular fight that he had against Dennis Marincek, he should have considered moving up to super lightweight. But given that he was part of the plan that they had for him, shout out to Carl Moretti, Vice President of Operations for Top Rank. He said, hey, look, we had him there to go up against Miguel Madueño last July on that Newark card where Shakur Stevenson was on. Then they said, hey, we'll have him in a hometown fight against Gustavo Lemos. And then after that, they said, hey, we got big plans for him, to have one fight and then to get him back to Norfolk. He has that fight against Dennis Marincek, and they set him up to be back in Norfolk. They did the end of the bargain. It was just with Keyshawn, if he could make weight, then he couldn't make weight. But from what I was told, it said the day before he was at 137. The next morning, he was at 139. Take that for what you will. But I mean, hey, if you can't make 135, then you can't make 135. I don't know where he was at before Thursday, but the report was the day before he was at 137, and then he gets up to 139. So that's it. As far as like him, as far as like his potential future at 140, maybe we'll see. Big up to my guy Thomas Hill in the live chat. There, says shout out my guy the Boxing Source for all the latest boxing talk. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I just try to get all the news and whatever it is. So, but yeah, that this whole situation there in Norfolk, man, it's almost like grand opening, grand closing because as I mentioned, Mike Vick was there for the weekend to support Keyshawn Davis. You have the mayor there of Norfolk, Virginia, that has been very supportive of Keyshawn Davis and the Davis brothers. You had Allen Iverson, that was there in attendance. Was it? I think they said Lil Boozy was there in attendance. Word it was that Shaq was going to be in attendance for this thing. So you had a potential of having this being a really, really big event for the city of Norfolk. And it just ended up being that way. And, that kind of like made it really, really bad there for, Keyshawn Davis and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
So I got a question.
Go ahead.
So Top Pick had a question in the chat. Why do y'all think Davis missed weight by 4 pounds? By what I think I heard you say, he was essentially trying to pull a Javante Davis in that he was ready to move up and he wanted to get him a big boy move to where he could do it in style and not be drained, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that part was actually a rumor that I heard from someone else, in that when he went into the weigh-in at 139, he fully thought that Edwin De Los Santos and his crew and his team were still going to go through with the fight. It looked like he really felt like that was going to happen. And hey, it is.
Everybody don't get the Javante Davis favor in a sense, because Javante Davis favor comes with a little bit more compensation for that favor.
Even with that, right? Like, because there's been instances where Javante Davis has missed weight, while holding the world title, whether it's super featherweight or I think it was at the time the super featherweight WBA title, right? He had some type of status, but you also had something going on with, as Keyshawn Davis said, his brother in Shakur Stevenson, right? Shakur Stevenson, who was the WBO featherweight champion, didn't have a defense of that WBO featherweight title. He moved up his next fight over, gets to 130, wins the WBO title there from Jamel Herring in Atlanta. Ends up having a unification bout with Oscar Valdez in Las Vegas in April of 2022. Wins that. His next fight against Robeson Conceição, he ends up being overweight. But it wasn't anywhere close like 4 pounds. It was more like 1.2 pounds overweight. So he didn't even necessarily have a defense of the unified super featherweight titles. But even with that being said, like with Shakur, it wasn't like he was really overweight. It was just the point where he just couldn't necessarily get down to the point of having it where he could make weight. But with him being at 1.2 pounds overweight, that was part of a factor there with having a fight with Robeson Conceição still take place. The other thing, though, was Robeson Conceição was a top-ranked fighter. So you could pretty much work a deal or whatever it is, because Conceição was still, signed with Top Rank. With Edwin De Los Santos, they have no rights to Edwin De Los Santos. It's all through Samson Lukowitz and Samson Boxing. So you have that, and Samson's they're on the stage, looking at Keyshawn and says, nah, he ain't getting down to no 135, or he ain't getting down to anywhere close to 135. So that's why they ultimately made the decision and said, no, we're not going to go through with it. Just give us the money that we have initially for our purse, and we're good. So that's kind of like how that turned out. Topic on the live chat asks, do you think Ray Murtagh was a factor in the decision to move up? No. As far as I know, Ray Murtagh, being at the time the IBF interim champion there at lightweight, they weren't having any plans of having those two fight anytime soon. Like with Ray Murataya was either going to be he'll see about having a fight with Vasily Lomachenko, or they're going to have a voluntary defense there for Ray Murataya. And well, with Lomachenko retiring, you're likely we're going to see Murataya there to have a voluntary defense of the IBF lightweight title. So Lomachenko retires. That's it with Lomachenko. Ray Murataya is elevated to a full IBF champion. He'll have a voluntary defense or whatnot. So there's that. Now, that was pretty much all I could kind of like get at so far, as far as like that whole ordeal. As I said, in reference to the initial confrontation or little altercation that happened with Keyshawn Davis and Nahir Albright, all I'm gonna say is there may or may not be video of what happened in that locker room. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Now, want to move forward. Actual main event there at Scope Arena. He had Abdullah Mason there against Jeremiah Nakavita. Abdullah Mason quickly rises up the ranks there in the lightweight division. Turned 21 in April. This was his third fight this year. He fought February 14th. He fought in April. And now he's here going up against Jeremiah Nakavita, of course, a former title challenger. Fought Shakur Stevenson, fought a number of other notable fighters. But here at this point, like he had like a couple of fights over in Namibia, I think, before this. And he was food. He was absolute food for Abdullah Mason. And once Abdullah Mason turned it up after round 3 and broke down Jeremiah Nakavita, it was all but over, right? And some of y'all watched it on ESPN. Of course, like I was mentioning, I was there ringside, for photography. I was on the opposite side thereof, in between the blue corner and the neutral corner. So when I look to my right, I see Nakavita there with the doctor and the referee, and I'm looking there live, and I'm like, please don't stop this fight. Please don't stop this fight, because I wanted to see like a, as a fan of the sport, you want to see like a definitive stoppage. You know what I'm saying? You want to see Abdullah Mason, finish the show and just, turn it up or whatever it is, right? So I'm like, please don't stop the fight. Please don't stop the fight. And then when the referee just waved it off, I'm like, oh, if y'all are able to, if y'all have ESPN Plus or whatever it is, and you see the replay, you might see me. You might see me like that, man. I'm telling you, because I wanted it to be definitive. You feel me? And Abdullah Mason looks like he's going to be the next one up for top rank. Of course, with the WBO title being vacant, you have to where Abdullah Mason could potentially fight for the vacant title next. Could be against Sam Noakes. Could be against another contender there in the WBO rankings. But, that's what Top Rank is going to be pushing for with Abdullah Mason. Before all of what happened with Keyshawn Davis, they had a plan to have him have 2 more fights this year. Now with the WBO title vacant, they may just have it to where they just set up that one fight between him and Sam Noakes, maybe of the UK, or they said, was it Christopher Maufo, who's ranked number 4 in the WBO right now, for that vacant WBO lightweight title. But Abdullah Mason, like, quickly becoming that next person up. He could be a world champion at 21 years old potentially there. So big plans now for Abdullah Mason, and they're the next person up. And it's more about like, how now people are saying like, okay, you see how that group handled being out there in the spotlight in comparison to, what Keyshawn kind of did there. But, more power to Abdullah Mason. He's like really coming into his own there, and looking at him there live and how he just like puts everything in his punches and just has the grunts there. He kind of reminds me of a fighter that currently is a unified world champion in a certain division, but I'm not going to say his name because that would really kind of like set a few people off. But he kind of like has those type of dimensions or like mannerisms similar to a fighter that is a unified champion. Okay, so that's what I have on that topic. As do you think Abdullah Mason will get a shot at Shakur at 135 pounds? No. Um, as I mentioned, they had plans for Abdullah Mason to build him up to a certain level. They're not going to have him go up against Shakur Stevenson, even though their party wants that fight with Shakur Stevenson. They wanted it. Hey, they said hey they wanted to have a fight there with Keyshawn Davis before you had what happened happen. But I'm not sure if they'll go forward with having Abdullah Mason face Shakur here anytime soon. If both of them are at 135 pounds, so that's what I initially had on that. What are y'all reactions to Abdullah Mason and him getting this win over Jeremiah Nakathila and him potentially fighting for the WBO lightweight title?
Well, one man's misfortune is going to be another man's blessing in disguise, right? We just talked about what Keyshawn moving on and losing that WBO strap, and I don't know if you guys recall a few months ago I was on record saying I think Abdullah Mason could beat Keyshawn right now. Still, I still think that. Now we know there's a contrast in experience and things like that. Even we talked about the in the lead up to this fight when we shared that one clip when him and Keyshawn were kind of going at it. And real talk, Keyshawn's a big dog right now. Right? He exudes confidence, and he should. The dude can fight. He can definitely fight. He's already proven that. But at the same time, Abdullah Mason is right there because he's skilled. He's still gaining more experience. We know that he got knocked down his last fight, twice. Got from the canvas and won, and got the victor, the win in that one. I think knocked that guy out and things like that. There's a lot of difference in experience and things like that, and even in personality between the two. He's a quiet kid by nature. Uh, that probably will change as time goes along, but still, for me, Abdullah Mason because his skill set beats Keyshawn right now. That's me. Now, but other than that, just his performance, crisp, clean. Man, I'm looking at those jabs. I was like, shit, pow, 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 pow. I was like, man, this dude is cold. And he just turned 21. Scary, scary. So in that sense, he hasn't really got his grown man strength, as we say yet.
Yeah.
But and wait until that comes, and when that comes, that's going to add to his power. He already has power. We see that, and he's not just fighting nobodies like that. So I mean, this guy, so like I said, one man's misfortune is going to be another man's blessing in disguise, and hell, and given what Keyshawn just did, made it a fiasco of this event. Now Top Rank has the idea to promote Abdullah Mason, a nice, young, clean-hearted champion that they can get behind and promote. Hey, sky's the limit for him, man. Hope he gets a shot this year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he definitely did his thing here against Jeremiah Nakathila. As I said, that was his third fight this year. He was supposed to fight, Giovanni Cabrera in April, but Cabrera got injured, whatnot, and so as a result, Mason fought Carlos Ornelas there in April, and that was like his 21st birthday. He turned 21 there in April and beat up Ornelas. And before that, he beat up Manuel James at MSG in February. So he's already had 3 fights this year. He's now at 19-0 with 17 knockouts. And he's like really, really building himself up as one of those guys to watch, in the lightweight division, one of the young fighters to watch out for here being, 21. You know what I mean? So sky's the limit definitely here for Abdullah Mason. I think that they're going to continue to listen to, what the matchmakers are saying, with Brad Goodman and Bruce Trampler. Carl Moretti there, of course, VP of Operations, will, also have a little bit of input on, what they're going to do here with Abdullah Mason. They do want to have a fight card in his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, and get a couple of his brothers involved in that. So let's see if they'll go forward with that on there. Box Academic, what did you think about Abdullah Mason there on Saturday night? You got something?
So I'm gonna talk about Nakatila first.
Okay.
Nakatila is as if you put Julius Ndongo in this level of fight earlier in his career. That's what you would have got with Julius Ndongo if you'd have put him in. If the crop of fighters would have been better, and he fought anybody in the division above him that was young but good, this is what would have happened. And I don't know. I think I'm pretty sure they're from different countries, but what I will say is that what I have noticed as a pattern with, I think I'm going to say African fighters, like the balance be kind of off. And you know how Terrence Crawford has very good balance to where he can punch in almost every position he lands. And then when he do the little hop step back, he lands so balanced to where he can hit you with either hands, and or he practiced to be able to throw on either side too. So the practice of being able to throw on both sides, the balance in being comfortable to throw on both sides, I don't see that with some of the African fighters that I see fight. They're sort of one stance dominant and don't have the ability to throw different shots outside of that first shot that they practice, jab, jab, right hand. And even then, their balance be real wrong to where when they throw the right hand or whatever the backhand is, they be off balance. And that gets them in trouble when they fight somebody who can take advantage of it. Oh, but Abdullah Mason, yeah, he looked good. I don't think this fight, I mean, he did everything he was supposed to do. Let me first say that. Like, the moment was there. He took advantage of the moment. But this fight didn't tell me much about him because maybe this is what he needs in terms of before he steps it up. But this fight didn't tell me a lot because he was just head over heels better than this guy, such that he made the guy. Well, let me say this: in the corner, Nakatila said his eye was hurting or whatever, and so you can't take that for granted because obviously people died in the ring. But what I will say, Abdullah Mason was so much better than him that mentally, Nakatila was checked out, and he ain't want them. He said no. He did the African version of no mas. Like, he ain't want no more punishment.
Yeah, he did exactly that.
And, maybe his eye was hurting and stuff. And, I'm going to give him for granted that actually was true. Then, I mean, he saved himself and he said, nah, I won't do no more. So it is what it is. But this didn't tell me nothing about Abdullah Mason because he fought somebody that he should have knocked out, which, he got the TKO or whatever.
Yeah, he did. And Jeremiah Nakatila and Julius Ndongo from the same city, same country. Yep. Windhoek, Namibia. So
and they might be from the same gym, you know what I'm saying?
It could be. But like
that's crazy how I noticed that pattern, ain't it?
Yeah.
Like the off balance.
That's why you're the boxing academic.
I mean, see, you need to clip this. So you need to clip this so Matt can see whenever he talk about me. You need to clip this so Matt can see. This is why they call me the boxing academic.
That part.
Thank you, Terrell. I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that.
That is the in-depth analysis there that the boxing academic provides each and every week here on the Boxing Source podcast, man. Matt just be hating. That's all it is, Matt. Just be hating. All right. But yeah, the same, it's like the same type of style. If you have some of those fighters there from, a few African countries there, whether it's like Namibia or maybe Nigeria or Ghana, but a lot of them come from Ghana. That they have a certain style and that they don't necessarily delve away from that style. And I've had like conversations with, of course, our former world champion there, Richard Comey, and Comey will tell you that sometimes those programs in a lot of the African countries, they're not like as diverse, and they don't really put that much into those programs. One, and then two, even if they do, it's more of like one or two people, and they want to control everything. So you don't really get that many options, and you don't have the thing where you could get multiple styles. So as far as like seeing the similar style from a lot of these African fighters, yeah, you can see that. But once they kind of get out of where they're at, as far as like Namibia or maybe the DNC, the Congo, or Nigeria or Ghana or whatever, once they fight outside of that, they could get to a certain level, but you can see that if they match up against a certain style, they're really out of the loop and end up getting beat up, So here with Nakathila, he only had like a few fights that were in his home country after his last loss, which was in 2023 to Ernesto Mercado, and he got stopped there within 2 rounds. And before that, he lost to Raymond Ataya in 2 rounds. So the thing that kind of like semi-resurrected his career after losing to Stevenson was him stopping Miguel Burchell, back in March of 2022. But then after that, once he, went up against a number of fighters that were, had a certain skill level and were like younger than him or something like that, or fresher, then he ended up just getting beat up. And so that's what you had here with Abdullah Mason, just a younger fighter that, eventually just was worlds above what, Nakathila was. And as they say, if you know that the fighter that you're going up against ain't supposed to be in there with you, you get them out of there. And that's what we had there with Abdullah Mason. Went up there, took care of business, handled it, 5th round stoppage, and that was that. With that being said, you had that as part of the card. Troy Isley was able to get a decision win there against Atuni William. Tiger Johnson had a decision win over Janelson Boca Chica, which that fight there didn't really have that much action until like maybe round 7 or 8. I didn't really see Boca Chica have that much, activity there. He was just there. It almost seemed like he was just there to just beat her, So you had that. Keyshawn Davis in his fight was able to get a knockout win with a body shot over Michael Velez Garcia, and that was a good body shot where he finished him. Derek Davis got a stoppage victory or a knockout victory there against Naheem Parker with a body shot as well. And you had a few other fights there with Yuri Cedeno getting the win and Patrick O'Connor getting the win. So like every, as they say, A-side fighter won, with the exception of Kelvin Davis on that fight card. So that's what you had there on that front. And like I said, the aftermath, we still, are dealing with the aftermath of, what happened there with Keyshawn Davis and his altercation there with Nahir Albright. Nahir Albright, does want the rematch with Keyshawn Davis. Spoke with his promoter there for RDR Promotions. They want to go ahead with the rematch. So we'll see, what turns out with that. You know what I mean? It was a interesting situation there on that front. You know what I mean? So he did have a lot of activity after the fights, a lot of activity at the host hotel. But hey, for Keyshawn, I don't know where he's gonna go from this particular point. I'm gonna see here, man. He's about over an hour in. I'm gonna see here. Maybe I'll have the thing here for at least a couple, I guess, to join in, share a couple thoughts on what happened this weekend. But just real quick, you did have ProBox TV. They did have action on ProBox TV, right? But for me, the story on that too, right? And this was happening, while I was there in Norfolk. Keyshawn Davis wasn't the only fighter that missed weight there for a main event. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. Justin Paldo missed weight. And I was like, what? I was like, oh man, like he was a guy that, I guess was, climbing up the rankings there in the lightweight division, getting up there, trying to get up there in the WBO rankings himself, and was going to be part of this main event here against Juan Carlos Burgos. And, he just ended up missing weight there. And that fight against Juan Carlos Burgos ended up getting scrapped also. So all you had was Michael Angeletti there against Eros Correa as the main event there in the bantamweight division. And we all know, what the Baxter Academic feels about those divisions below lightweight. So we'll just go with the result. Angeletti gets a unanimous decision win. It was a near shutout there against Eros Correa. You also had Emiliano Moreno there in the super welterweight division going up against Eric Bone in the co-feature. Got a TKO victory on that. And also, we had, Rihanna Rios here from this area, the DC area, that got a victory on that fight card against Wadelin Cruz. So that was mainly what happened there on ProBox. And then you also had in the heavyweight division, Fabio Wardley going up against Justis Huni. Therefore, I think it was the either the interim title or like the regular WBA title. Man, I know the WBA, they have like a whole bunch of titles, and I can't even figure out like what it is that they got. But I guess it's like an interim title or something. I don't know. And Fabio Wardley was losing the fight on all the cards. He was like losing almost like every round from like, round, 1 to round 9. And then here in round 10, he was able to, score a knockdown and ended up being a knockout as, Justis Huni didn't answer the 10 count. So you have Fabio Wardley getting a win there. He's still undefeated now at 19-0 with 1 draw, 18 wins by way of knockout. They say that he's going to end up fighting the winner of Michael Hunter versus Kubrat Pulev. And, I'm working on seeing if I can get secure an interview with one of those fighters here later on down the line. So be on the lookout for that. But that was like the action there in the heavyweight division. Whole lot of activity there in boxing for the weekend, but it's just that those stories there with Keyshawn Davis just dominated the headlines there for boxing. So that's what kind of really had people going. And we'll see what happens here for these next few weeks. As as I said, you would have had something going on with the WBO belt. And then you got a WBC title, lightweight title on the line now with Shakur Stevenson going up against William Zepeda. And then the WBA title is supposed to be on the line in August. But I haven't necessarily heard anything or an announcement as far as like what could be going on for August 16th. But I did see something. I did see a post from a certain fighter that, of course, y'all know I am not in favor of one bit. And they said they posted August 16th on his post. And he had a hat on, a specific hat on. And that hat had PBC Premier Boxing Champions. And that fighter was Mr. Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez was around Las Vegas the weekend of that Caleb Plant Armando Resendiz fight. And they did have some comments there with Teofimo Lopez that was posted on the Premier Boxing Champions social media. There was one post there from Teofimo Lopez that was reposted or retweeted by Premier Boxing Champions. So it looks like he may be involved with the Premier Boxing Champions event. Now, if they're gonna go forward with Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach, that rematch at T-Mobile Arena on August 16th, if Teofimo Lopez is going to be involved in it, I have maybe one fighter that he could have as his opponent. And I would have to contact somebody on it, but I'll see. But if it's who I think it is, there's going to be a really big fight there at the 140-pound division. I did kind of miss that thing there topic. For July 19th, Dominic Dimes Crowder will be on the undercard for Ben Rodriguez versus Fumalele Cafu there. That's going to be at the Star in Frisco, Texas. So, yeah, Dominic Dimes Crowder is on that fight card there. That's Matchroom Boxing live on the Zone July 19th as well. So, definitely a very busy summer, of course, with Manny Pacquiao facing Mario Barrios in Las Vegas on July 19th. There, as far as like that being on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. So, a lot
So
of
you're saying that the proposed date for this PBC card is August 16th, right?
that is supposedly what's going down. As far as I know, it's supposed to be Tank versus Lamont Roach. I haven't seen anything from the WBA that says anything otherwise as far as like that fight is concerned, right? And for the WBA, the super lightweight champion is a certain fighter there that recently won the title. And they did,
Yeah.
and they did have an announcement for the mandatory sometime back. And they said that they were supposed to have a purse bid. They haven't had a purse bid. I haven't seen any announcement about that fight being secured and having a date. So that is what I'm looking for. They haven't announced it yet. But with this thing with Teofimo Lopez making this post, I'm like, I wonder if something else is in the works. Like I said, I will have to contact somebody here because I had a conversation with one person earlier today and haven't been able to follow up with them yet. So
Well, isn't there a Riyadh season card happening around that same time, right?
what, around August? No, that
No.
fight thing that hasn't quite happened yet. For whatever they trying to do, that hasn't been fully announced yet. So I don't know what Riyadh season is going to do at this point, because they initially had the joint for Teofimo Lopez to fight Devin Haney, and that was supposed to be on August 16th, but that ended up being completely scrapped. Then I would have to see if they have something else here announced for Riyadh season, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Well, T.O. knows what he's doing, so to speak, but I don't know. Crazy. If he does, I'm sure it's. So I hope it's a great opponent. I hope it does kind of happen. So.
It's going to be a great opponent, because the way that, of course, Teofimo Lopez has basically handled himself over the past year, that's what made Top Rank do what they were doing. They were ready to just wash their hands of him, let him go, and like say, hey, whoever wants them, do what you want with them, because we're done with them, right? And they kind of like put a semi mark on Teofimo Lopez to say, hey, someone fight him, someone beat him up, and then we'll be completely done with them. That's how the whole thing with Boots Ennis got brought up in the first place. That was last year, because Tio had declined fights with Brian Norman Jr. for the WBO welterweight title last year. Declined a fight with Subriel Matias, where he could have headlined, and that would have been this year. And so they said, you know what? Let me go ahead and try to just wash our hands with them. Try to have one fight against a fighter that, either could beat him or we know that will beat him, as long as he accepts. And, that will be that. But didn't quite work out that way there with the Arnold Barbosa fight. And now it's more about, okay, do we potentially have something in the works here with Teofimo Lopez being on a Premier Boxing Champions televised event, or they're with TGB Promotions, of course, leading the way from a promotional standpoint there. So, like I said, I have to make a phone call after this and see what's going on, and maybe we could be closer to something else there at 140 pounds that we'll see. The topic asks, does Davis deserve a Teo fight? Teo don't deserve anything. Okay. I'm still against Teofimo Lopez. Still will be against Teofimo Lopez. Regardless of what Keyshawn Davis did, I'm still against Teofimo Lopez. Shout out to Brother Zeke Pacino there on the live chat here. Thank you for joining here live on this conversation here for the Boxing Source podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing what could happen here if they have potentially Teo involved in the August 16th card, which seems to be scheduled for being at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So we'll see how that goes down. But that's what I had on that front. We got some action coming up this weekend over at the theater at Madison Square Garden. You're gonna have Richard Hitchens going up against George Kambosos on there. You're gonna have Andy Cruz that's gonna be on this card as well. I think that is what he's gonna be on the co-feature there on that. So definitely looking to see what Andy Cruz does there on that as well. You're supposed to have, I think, Zakeem Moses is supposed to be on there on this matchroom card as well. So, and that's, for me at least, that's pretty much it. As far as like these other fighters, just being honest with y'all, I have no idea who they are. I really don't. But we're gonna find out on Saturday. You feel me? So that's basically what I had. Looks like I still are trying to see if I can fully recover from the weekend and everything like that. But big thanks for everyone that's been able to listen live. You can catch the replay, whether it's going to be on YouTube, on Rumble, or podcast form through Spotify. Big ups to the Boxing Academic and Brother Terrell for joining us here on the panel. And I'll be able to have more here, I guess, through the midweek report on Wednesday. For Tuesday, we're not going to have a episode of Real Boxing with Ronnie Shields on Tuesday. We're going to push that back. Co-host there, Brother Joe, is dealing with an illness there. So our prayers out to Brother Joe here as he deals with the illness. For courtesy, at least for this week, we're not going to have the show on Tuesday with Real Boxing with Ronnie Shields, but I'll catch up with them here over the course of the week. Do want to get his thoughts on, of course, Justin Paul missing weight for Saturday, and more coming from a number of his fighters that are going to be involved in some cards here in the future. So just be aware of what's going on here through the Boxing Source channels, whether it's through YouTube or Rumble, and I'll see about getting more information on the fallout from Norfolk too. So y'all know it's far from over. So I'll see about getting more on that. And like I said, thanks everyone for listening in. And with that being said, I will catch y'all later. Peace out.